Hallo zusammen und herzlich willkommen zu diesem, oh, sorry, wrong language. Let's try this again. Hi everyone and welcome to this webinar, a technical deep dive on MatchPoint Snow. Happy that you all could make it to this meeting. We are going to have this meeting in English because we have some English speaking participants, and also for your information, we are recording this webinar, so you will receive a link that allows you to watch this webinar later on. Before we get started, let me introduce us guys here from Colygon in the chat today. With me is Markus Dogweiler, who will do some of the really deep technical parts later on today and show you how you can implement a MatchPoint Snowflake. And also we have in the room Tobias Wagner from the support team. One request that I have is that you keep yourselves on mute during our presentation. We're going to have a Q&A part later on where you will be able to ask your questions. And also, since we have a few guys on the chat, please feel free if you have a question coming up to post it in the chat, and we'll either pick it up or directly answer it on the chat. Okay, first off, before I dive into the presentation, a quick check. Can everyone hear me loud and clear? And is everything all right so far? Or are there any technical problems before we get started? I received a few positive feedbacks, so I presume everything is all right. As I said, we have colleagues watching the chat, so if any problems or questions come up, please refer to the chat room. I always prefer to have these sessions in relative quiet because if everyone has their microphone open, we all are going to go home tonight with a terrible headache. So let's finally get started. First off, I'd like to give you an overview what we're going to show you today. We're going to start off with a quick recap regarding the functionality of MatchPoint Snow, so to speak, from an end user's perspective, as a chance for everyone who didn't get to see a demo of MatchPoint Snow yet to sort of catch up. We're going to keep this brief since this is a technical deep dive. Second, we're going to have a quick architecture overview to show you the essential functionalities and concepts behind MatchPoint Snow. We're going to then proceed to some specific information regarding installation and configuration of MatchPoint Snow. This is also about the time when I'm going to hand over to Markus for the second part of this webinar, where we are going to talk about the metadata concept behind MatchPoint Snow and about the concept of MatchPoint Snowflakes and how you can implement a MatchPoint Snowflakes. And finally, as mentioned before, we are going to have a Q&A part with a chance for you to fire away with your questions. As you see, we reserved around 2 hours for the whole session. We estimate that the first part is probably not going to take a whole 1 hour and 30 minutes. So we might either have more time for questions or probably also a good thing to go home a bit early today. So that's roughly the plan, and we hope that this is what you expected or hoped for in this session. And if you have any questions, as said before, please let us know first in the chat, and we're going to pick that up then. Okay, first a quick recap of MatchPoint Snow's functionality. This is picking up essentially for those of you who have been either in a webinar from Patrick or on our launch event, what we showed there. I'm going to switch over to my demo environment, And on this page here, you see essentially what a user sees first when he accesses a page with MatchPoint Snow installed. What we see in the front is the welcome screen of MatchPoint Snow, where the user gets a personalized screen with different actions that allows him to quickly access content within MatchPoint Snow. Also, to change his display language, and if he or she doesn't want to see the screen ever again, he can select this here as well. So that's the welcome screen. If we close that one, we are taken to one of the landing pages of Snow. This is what we see in the top here are the main dimensions of Snow, the timeline, workspaces, content, and people. And these four main dimensions are how content is organized within MatchPoint Snow. Timeline content displays what's going on this site. This information comes in part from the user's My Site and in part from the SharePoint Search Index. Workspaces, as you can imagine, lists all the workspaces, projects, communities, etc. that have been created within MatchPoint Snow. Content lists content from within these workspaces. You see here on each of these landing pages, you usually have different views. For instance, here on the content page, we can switch whether we would like to see documents, tasks, etc. And on the people page, naturally, we see people. For instance, if we go to trending people, we see who created a lot of content on this environment here, or followed other people I'm following. The general page layout that we have here, as you've seen on all the sites so far, besides the navigation bar on the top, we have on the left-hand side this blue area with contextual actions. And we have on the right-hand side, sorry, I mixed up left and right here. On the left-hand side, naturally, we have filters that allow us to drill down into the content. And in the main area, we have the content that is currently displayed, as I said, usually with different kinds of views that allow you to drill into the result set. The filters on the left-hand side are based on the metadata model that's behind MatchPoint Snow and on standard properties like, for instance, creation date, modification date, etc. And the contextual actions on the right-hand side allow you to quickly, for instance, create a workspace, upload a document. Let me just bring up one of those dialogues here. If you select create a workspace, you can select what kind of workspace you would like to create. For instance, if I wanted to create a community, I would select the community type here, and then you essentially only have to specify a title and click the create button, and the corresponding workspace is created. Let me see what I have forgotten. What you have also on all pages is a search field that allows you to search the content of the current page, and you can switch to the advanced search page where you can do a more general search, for instance, based on metadata. For instance, if I wanted to see all workspaces that use the community template, I can select the community tag, etc. So here we have a pretty much standard search page as far as MatchPoint is concerned. If we switch to the workspaces view and open up one of the workspaces here, we see that the view is in some areas exactly the same. We still have the dimensions on the top. We still have the contextual actions. These contextual actions are different from the ones that we've seen on the landing pages. For instance, I can here select all the people that have access to that current workspace. You see here that we have 3 roles: an owner for the workspace, members and readers. And by the way, if you're using a community site here, a reader can not automatically, can self-service become a member by subscribing to the community. So this is one of the little functionalities that MatchPoint now brings. Also, if I want to upload a document here, for instance, I have a upload dialog that will upload that document directly into the workspace, which is a little different. For instance, if you go back to the workspace page, if I upload a document from here, I first select a workspace into which I would like to upload, and then I have that same dialog again, but this time I can upload a document to a specific workspace without actually having to access that workspace. Going back to one of the workspaces that we have, another important site that we see here is the govern workspace contextual action. Here we manage the metadata of the workspace. You've seen in the creator dialog before that essentially a user only has to specify a title and a description before creating a workspace. If you want to use additional metadata, and for instance, you can specify here various metadata categories like business unit, location, customer, product, and process. You can do this on this page here by simply clicking edit, and then most of you probably know our workspace editor, that part. Then here you can specify the metadata. You have additional metadata fields here as well, and those are not intended for end users to be changed. For instance, decommissioning of the workspace, what happens when the end of life for this workspace comes, when the workspace is subject to review, and whether this workspace is subject to an approval process. And also within the content tab here, we can specify some generic classifications and other metadata like a priority and targeting for the workspace. And so that's actually already all that I wanted to show here within MatchPoint Now. As I said, we wanted to keep this a bit brief. Most of you probably have already seen this. Maybe just one or two additional things that you can access here within MatchPoint Now, within the content page, which you've already seen. You see all the content from the various workspaces. You can change here between different views. Also, you have these different filter criteria if you would like to see all content or only content that you're following. You have search functionality, of course. And if I switch maybe for a final quick presentation to the people page and open up one of the people that we have here on this portal, you see here a quick overview of what this person is up to lately, and you can also access a page with an aggregated view with information that comes in part from within MatchPoint Now and in part from the user profile store. For instance, information on regarding how to contact that person and information what tasks, issues, documents, etc. that person has been working on. So that's more or less the first part of what I wanted to show you, a functionality recap. Before we proceed here, maybe a quick chance for you to ask questions. Does anyone already have a question, or is it okay if we proceed to the second topic for today, MatchPoint Now architecture? Seems quiet in the chat. Therefore, I take that as a yes for me to continue. So we prepared a few slides. Some of you may already know these from the release presentation. First, a quick overview, and I assume that all of you know how SharePoint works. That is based on one hand on Microsoft IIS, and on the other hand on Microsoft SQL Server as far as management of content databases is involved. So taking a look at this, there's nothing special really about MatchPoint. No, MatchPoint itself is based on that architecture and follows the SharePoint architecture concepts. With all the functionality that we are implementing, and the same goes for MatchPoint Snow. A bit more specific, if we take a look at the SharePoint part of that first chart, with SharePoint, we have this concept of service applications. I highlighted three important ones here, important insofar as those are service applications that we are using within MatchPoint Snow. So we are using fast search heavily, we are using the user profile store, and indirectly we are also using the managed metadata feature. And that's on one side of the equation. The other side is, of course, MatchPoint with the various functionalities that MatchPoint brings to the table. We have the functionality of workspaces, which are used within MatchPoint Snow. Every Snow workspace is a MatchPoint workspace, based also on a MatchPoint provisioning template. We've seen the roles that we can define for various Snow workspaces, owners, members, and readers. We've seen metadata that we can configure, and this metadata is implemented using MatchPoint's tagging mechanism, and therefore on the service application side, we need to configure a tag store if we are using MatchPoint Snow. Now, if we are taking a look at the web application where Snow is running itself, in there we have one side which is seen, we call it the Snow root side. This is the site that contains all the landing pages for MatchPoint Snow, so what we've seen, timeline, workspaces, content, and people, and of course all the web parts that are part of that root side, like for instance all the result views, all the filter elements, all the contextual actions, etc. All this is in a manner of speaking configured on that Snow root side as a content element which displays the search results, for instance, from a fast search to the end user. And using MatchPoint functionality like our connection framework, also have the functionality that we've seen of dependent web parts, find on type functionality, etc. Since we're using MatchPoint, it comes as no surprise that MatchPoint Snow requires an admin site. This is by definition the same site collection that also hosts the MatchPoint instance administration. So the Snow admin site is, with one exception, absolutely identical to a standard MatchPoint administration site, meaning that all the configuration files that are part of MatchPoint Snow are hosted within that site collection. The exception that I mentioned is that also on this site, and this is optional, you might have various lists in which the metadata model of MatchPoint Snow is managed and administrated. And then, as you've seen also within MatchPoint Snow, we have various workspaces that are created. With these colors that we see here, I try to indicate it that both the Snow side and each workspace, of course, use functionality on one hand of SharePoint in terms of where is the content aggregated from that we see within the Snow root side or within a workspace, and of course also each workspace and also the Snow root side are using the functionalities of MatchPoint. What's now missing in this picture, this is what will come in a little while when we talk about snowflakes, is also that each snowflake that you might configure and implement for your environment requires its own site. And what's very important here is that MatchPoint Snow itself is implemented exactly in the same manner of in the same way as a snowflake that you might implement, meaning that you have a root site on which you create the landing pages for your users, And you then have the workspaces, which are created by the MatchPoint functionality of workspaces and provisioning templates, which contain the content that you define for your workspaces. Another image that makes this a little more clearer, if you sort of zoom in on the web application that contains MatchPoint Snow, we have sort of as a virtual layer in there SharePoint services like Fast Search and the User Profile Store. We have the Snow root site collection and the Snow workspaces, which constitute the functionalities of MatchPoint Snow. And then, depending on how many snowflakes we might be using, we have a site collection for each snowflake, on which we have the content pages for that snowflake, and we have the snowflake workspaces themselves. So that's an overview about the architecture of MatchPoint Snow. And now if we take one more step closer to how Snow works, I would like to show you the MatchPoint Snow configuration mechanism. On this chart that we see here, we try to separate this into SharePoint objects and the configurations used within MatchPoint Snow. And the important configuration file that we have here is the Snowflake configuration file. And as I mentioned before, MatchPoint Snow itself uses that exact same mechanism. Also, we have the Snowflake site collection or the Snowflake root site. And one important thing that we have within the MatchPoint Snow configuration file is that, of course, first we have to specify the URL of that site collection so that MatchPoint Snow knows where a snowflake is located. And also we specify the navigation nodes displayed in the top of that little box and the contextual actions that are displayed on each of the landing pages. And besides that, we have beneath one managed path, the Snow workspaces. And for these workspaces, also within the Snowflake configuration file, we specify a managed path and we specify different workspace types. Workspace types are what we've seen in my little demo before. For instance, a project can be a workspace type, a community can be a workspace type. And of course, when you're configuring either MatchPoint Snow or a Snowflake, you can also add additional workspace types. One thing that's important is that beneath every workspace type, you have a provisioning configuration file that defines the layout and structure of the workspace itself. And this provisioning configuration is again a standard MatchPoint configuration file, and therefore you can do everything that you can do with the standard MatchPoint installation. And also what we don't see in this chart here is, of course, that within various points within MatchPoint Snow, you use the standard MatchPoint web parts again. So for instance, within your workspaces, you can create aggregated views, for instance, by using the data grid web part, the composite web part, and the same goes, of course, for the Snowflake site collection. Within that site here, you can configure the various landing pages for your users with aggregated views. For instance, like we've seen in MatchPoint Snow, a view that displays content from the timeline, a view that displays content from workspaces, etc. So this is the Snow configuration, and I would like to quickly switch to my environment here. I have to change the user quickly, since Jim Halpert is not an administrator and therefore is not allowed to see MatchPoint configurations. Okay, here we are. One more try. All right. Now I'm logged in as the administrator. One important side note is, some of you may already have noticed, the SharePoint title or top bar, however we call it, including the ribbon, are not visible within MatchPoint Snow to regular end users. It requires site collection administrator permissions to see this. The only exception is once you drill down into a workspace, and within that workspace, for instance, you access a document library. In here, of course, we need the functionality that's provided by the SharePoint ribbon, for instance, and therefore in here, regular users will again see the SharePoint ribbon. All sites above that, the workspace and also the landing pages, hide these controls from the end user. Also, what I wanted to do initially, show you the MatchPoint Snow configuration. You see here, if we take a quick look at the kinds of configuration files that you have here, that we configured quite a lot of web parts, apparently just short of 130 configuration files for MatchPoint Snow. And one of these is a singleton configuration you see here in the top, the MatchPoint Snow configuration. This is sort of the base configuration, in this case for MatchPoint Snow, and you will have one of these configuration files for each snowflake that you're implementing. The important configuration elements that we have here are on the root configuration, of course, the already mentioned managed path, but it didn't specifically mention we also have an ID and a name field. This is important because a lot of the functionality of MatchPoint Snow is hangs on these two properties, so to speak. One effect that this has, for instance, is we are importing a tag for every snowflake that you register, and this snowflake tag will get the name property that we see here as a display name for the tag, and the ID will be used for the tag key. And this allows us to identify the different snowflakes, and also when we're within a specific workspace, we will have this snowflake tag applied, and therefore we'll know, for instance, which kinds of navigation controls to render and which kinds of contextual actions. Which brings us to the three important configuration elements that we've already seen in my little PowerPoint slide. We have the top navigation, where we can configure the navigation nodes, and as you can see here, if you're configuring MatchPoint Snow, you can add your own navigation nodes if you want to extend this functionality. And of course, if you're registering snowflakes, a separate navigation node with a list of all snowflakes will be automatically displayed. Also, second, we have the contextual actions, and in this case, these contextual actions will be displayed on all the landing pages. We have different contextual actions for the workspaces themselves, and for these contextual actions, you see here that you have different kinds of actions that allow you to configure what functionality should be available to the user. For instance, if you just pick one here, we have a generic web part page action which is named Create a Workspace, and this is essentially the functionality. If I go back to my Snow landing page here on the on any of these sites here, if I click Create a Workspace, this is the web part that is displayed here. Okay, so those are the contextual actions, and the last important configuration element that we have are the already mentioned workspace types. In here, we have quite a list of properties that you can specify. I'm not going to mention each and every one because most of these properties should be self-explaining. Important is what we've already seen. We can specify a provisioning configuration here. We can also specify a creator and a workspace editor. Those are, of course, the web parts used for creating and editing the workspace. Important if you're using our MatchPoint-based provisioning template that optionally you don't even have to implement these two web parts yourself. You can just use the default creator and editor, and you see here they are even named that way, that come with MatchPoint Snow. Also in here you can specify different roles, for instance, who's allowed to create a workspace of this type, and this will automatically define who will see corresponding actions for creating this workspace, or who will be allowed to see that workspace type when creating a new workspace. And you can also specify default values, for instance, for the owner, member, and reader role, and some more parameters. And also what we've seen in the PowerPoint slide is that for each workspace type, you can define different contextual actions, which are the same type that we've seen on the contextual actions for the landing page here. So here you can then configure different contextual actions for that workspace. So that would be my quick introduction regarding the architecture of MatchPoint. Again, before I proceed to the next topic, which is installation and configuration, a quick chance for you guys in case you have any questions already, or are you saving up for the Q&A session at the end? Seems like it. Pretty quiet in the chat. Okay, therefore, I'm going to continue with the next topic that we have, installation and configuration. This is already overlapping. We are going to have a few more information about at least the configuration part of this later on, when Marcus gives you an insight on how to implement your own Snowflake. First, I made a quick slide here as a recap or summary of what to look for when you're installing MatchPoint Snow. First, a few prerequisites regarding SharePoint, and I would like to quickly go through that list, because behind almost every of these requirements is specific functionality of MatchPoint Snow. The SharePoint installation itself, we recommend that you do a best practice installation of SharePoint, which should probably not be required to be put on a slide, but I thought it was would be safer anyway. Important, we have a feedback button within MatchPoint Snow, and that feedback button will only work if your SharePoint farm has outgoing mail settings configured. Also, this is required if you have workspaces, for instance, where a user doesn't have permissions to access them. Then he'll see the standard SharePoint dialog. You don't have access to this page. Let us know why you need access. And the emails, of course, are going to have to go to someone who can then configure appropriate permissions. Regarding the web application that hosts MatchPoint Snow, first of all, please configure self-service site creation. This has two reasons. The first one being MatchPoint Snow itself. Each Snow workspace is created as a site collection beneath a managed path, which is my second point here. And therefore, we need to have self-service site creation enabled. Otherwise, we won't be able to create workspaces. The second reason is, of course, the user profile service application and the My Site host. Every user gets a site collection, which is also automatically created, and therefore we need that. The managed path, same story. We are creating workspaces, and we need a managed path under which to create them. And also for the My Sites, you'll need a managed path for the user profile sites. Regarding site collections that are required on the web application, we have that already mentioned My Site host. We have the MatchPoint instance administration site. which, as mentioned before, will double as the administration site for MatchPoint Snow, containing all the configuration files, and we'll have a root site collection with the landing pages for MatchPoint Snow. Regarding service applications, two important ones here to take a look at regarding configuration. On the search service application, we need to have some additional managed properties specifically for MatchPoint Snow. I gave you the list here, which is of course part of the installation guide, just as a quick recap of what kind of managed properties are needed for MatchPoint Snow. And once these managed properties are created, also it's of course recommended that you either configure a crawl schedule or continuous crawling so that your content is up to date. Regarding the user profile service application, we're using this very heavily, and a lot of the content that is displayed within MatchPoint Snow comes from the user profile service application or from the fancy new features that MatchPoint Snow brings on the user profile service application and the My Site. For instance, the following functionality is based heavily on that, and therefore please first make sure that you have a user profile service application. Second, which is not a trivial problem, that your profile import is working. And finally, once you have a running profile import, please also ensure that your search service application has access to the user profile service application and that the user profiles are actually crawled, because otherwise you'll have a lot of empty landing pages when you access MatchPoint Snow. Regarding the installation of MatchPoint, this is also a prerequisite. Before you start installing MatchPoint Snow, please install MatchPoint. What we need here is a standard installation, nothing specific to take care of. One thing to keep in mind is that you will be using the same site collection, that is the MatchPoint instance administration, as the Snow administration site. Apart from that, just use the installation guide. If you want a very quick installation, you can use our installer. And before you get started with the installation of MatchPoint Snow, make sure that you have a tagging service application, because we will be needing that to import some tags. Now finally, regarding the installation of MatchPoint Snow itself, MatchPoint Snow comes in two solutions, WSP files, which you kindly have to add to the SharePoint Solution Store. Colygon.matchpoint.snow WSP is essentially everything required for MatchPoint Snow, and we have an optional second WSP which contains two things. First, a few lists which will be created on the admin site, in which we are managing metadata, and a corresponding timer job configuration that will import the content of these lists as tags into the tagging service application. Feature-wise, MatchPoint requires two features to be enabled on the administration side. Again, the first one, part of the Snow WSP, all the configuration files, those 127 that we've seen. And the second one, again, an optional feature, which will create the mentioned lists for managing metadata and that timer job configuration. On the Snow root side, there are two features to be enabled. Colygon.matchpoint.snow adds the landing pages and the snow styling that we've seen to that page, and a second feature we call initializer, which implements a header control which will be active essentially only when a user comes onto that page for the first time and doesn't have his or her My Site created. That initializer ensures that the My Site is created before the user actually accesses MatchPoint Snow, and therefore it also ensures that all the functionalities of MatchPoint Snow that are related to the My Site will be working correctly. Additional features which you don't specifically have to enable. I'm mentioning them because we've had some installation scenarios where something went wrong and the master page, for instance, had to be enabled manually in a second step. So there are two additional features, the master page and the theme, which should, and in the scenarios that we tested that worked, on the Snow side by the feature Colygon.matchpoint.snow. And we have a fifth feature called workspace navigation, and this is to be enabled only on the workspaces within MatchPoint Snow. And also you shouldn't have to enable that manually because it is enabled by our provisioning template. That's actually all I have regarding installation. We've had a few installations going on, first, of course, at our own test environments, but second also, we've been in touch with some of you who have already been installing MatchPoint Snow. We have the feeling that overall the process is pretty much straightforward. There's an installation guide with all the information, also a set of scripts which will automate most of the steps. Also, most of the steps that we've seen here, for instance, regarding creating the managed properties on the search service application. So we provided you with some information here, but also, of course, since we're talking about SharePoint, anything can go wrong when we're talking about the installation process, and therefore, if you run into any problems, please let us know and we will try to help you. Okay, the last two slides from my side, and then I'm going to hand over to Markus. The metadata concept within MatchPoint Snow. I'm going to go back to the environment in a minute to show this to you a bit more hands-on. As you've seen, the metadata is implemented using MatchPoint tags. These tags are applied on a workspace level and will then be inherited to all content. That's one of those strong features of MatchPoint that allows you to drag a document into the correct workspace, and it'll have the correct metadata. From an administrator's point of view, there are 3 timer jobs that need to be executed in order for the metadata model to be created correctly. And also please keep in mind the order that you see here. First we have a static importer that imports sort of the root tags. Then we have a system tag importer that imports all the tags that we sort of predefine for MatchPoint Snow. And finally, we have the business topic tag importer, which is optional. We see that on the next bullet, deployed by the metadata solution, which will implement the import the tags from those mentioned SharePoint lists. Let me quickly show this to you in my browser here. If I go on the administration side, let's leave the MatchPoint Snow configuration and go to the timer jobs. Here we have exactly these 3 importers. And if we take a look, let's see, for instance, here in the advanced search, in here we see the tags that are imported. We see some, let's maybe start with the governance tags. We see some governance tags, for instance, classification, approval, review, and so forth. Those are the ones that we've seen on the workspace governance page as well. And this is a static structure that we predefined. For instance, priority, we have high, medium, and low. And these are imported by the system, by the static tag importer, sorry. And then we have the system tags, and those are important because they are in part imported by those timer jobs, and in part they are created automatically. So for instance, we have the workspace tag here, and here each of the workspace types that we've seen in the MatchPoint Snow configuration will create one tag. So for instance, we have the community tag, and beneath that we will have the community workspaces, projects and the project workspaces, a team and the team workspaces, etc. Also, we will have a snowflake tag, and in there, each snowflake that you deploy to the system will result in a tag, and therefore you can use that tag for aggregating content, for instance, specifically from your MatchPoint snowflake. And finally, we have the already mentioned business tags with subtags for organization, location, relation, product, process, and document type. And these are managed, as mentioned before. If we go to the admin side and here on the site content, then you see here that we have these lists. Let's pick, for instance, the country. And in there, we have part of the metadata model here, in this case, the geography or the location tags for the countries. As mentioned before, the lists will be created by the metadata feature. The content can be created in different ways. I think Marcus is going to say a few words on that. And then those tags will be imported by the timer jobs. And that's now finally all that I wanted to say. And I'm now going to hand over to Marcus, who is going to tell you a few things about concept and implementation of MatchPoint snowflakes. 1 second, please, while I switch the WebEx controls. I have to find Marcus quickly. Here he is. And then Marcus is going to show you that next part on his environment.
So, yes. Okay. Hi, from my side, I'm Marcus, and I will show you how to implement a snowflake and just basically explain you the concept behind the snowflake. I'm sorry for the interruption. I think I was still on mute. I already started the presentation, but I'll start again now. So what I will cover is, I will try to answer following questions. I first will have a look at what is a snowflake. I think Toby did a pretty good job in explaining what a snowflake is, which configurations are required, but I will try to go into more detail on certain points. That's the second point, the configurations, and then we will create a snowflake. You can either create a snowflake manually by creating a configuration in the MatchPoint config editor and deploy and creating web parts as you normally would, or you could deploy a snowflake using a solution which you create in Visual Studio as you would do with a normal SharePoint project. And Colygon is providing a demo project which will help you to implement this. So before we actually get started, I would like to come back to the slide which Toby already showed a couple of minutes ago. I think it's important to recap what a snowflake actually is. we have the SharePoint objects. So that's the Snowflake site collection, which hosts the landing pages and all the features and web parts and pages and whatever, which is related to the functionality of your Snowflake. Then, of course, we have the specific workspaces, which are defined, which are based on workspace types, which are defined within your Snowflake configuration. And on MatchPoint level, there is the Snowflake configuration with the configuration elements Toby has already explained. The provisioning configuration you can see on the right-hand side is basically the link to the SharePoint structure, as the provisioning configuration defines the way your workspaces look like. So now that we know which parts are required for a Snowflake to exist, I will quickly explain what steps it takes to create a Snowflake, and then we will look at the different steps in more details. So first thing is to create a site collection. This is the root site collection where the Snowflake is hosted. Then you need to create or deploy, depending on the approach you are going to take, the Snowflake configuration, and of course the Snowflake configuration, including the contextual action, route navigation, and the workspace types. And you need to create and deploy any other required configurations which are needed within your Snowflake. So this can be provisioning templates for your workspace types, as well as any other MatchPoint configuration files for web parts, composites, data grids, charts, whatever you plan to use within your Snowflake. And then before we can actually access our Snowflake, we need to execute the timer jobs. To be more precise, the system timer job, because this is the timer job which creates the tags for snowflakes and the workspace types. And this is required as they will, for example, the workspace type will be the parent tag of the workspace tag, which is created automatically during the creation process of a workspace. So now that we know the basic steps, I would like to switch to SharePoint. And I have here MatchPoint Snow installation. It's pretty clean, so that I haven't done anything yet. I think I don't need to explain how the page is built up. Maybe just to recap, the black bar on the top is the top navigation. This is what you can configure in the Snowflake configuration. And on the right-hand side, what would you like to do section, these are the contextual actions. Then I would say we can go to the configuration editor. Here are all the configurations. Toby has already shown this. And then under miscellaneous, we see a new configuration, and this is the MatchPoint Snowflake configuration. So we will create a Snowflake configuration. As you see here, we have the mentioned configuration elements. This is just a quick example to see that it works. We will create, let's say, a test Snowflake. The ID is important. It needs to be unique because this will be the ID of the Snowflake tag, and this basically the Snowflake tags plays a central role within MatchPoint Snow, because based on this tag, MatchPoint Snow recognizes the context you're in. Are you in MatchPoint Snow itself, or are you in a specific Snowflake, and will then display the appropriate navigation in the top and the contextual actions. As we know now, next to the configuration, we have the base site collection. So of course we need to specify an URL. I will just do something now. This is not important. And I will create a top navigation node just so there is one there. We will see more on this later. Doesn't matter. Okay, now I will save the configuration, just give it any name, and now I'm back on my Snow landing pages, and if I refresh here, then we will see there's a new point in the top navigation, and this is the snowflakes point. So below this point, every snowflake which is configured within Snow will be listed. And the idea is to click on this link, and then we will be within the snowflake. This doesn't work now because obviously I haven't created the site collection, but I will show you how to do this and how to deploy your snowflake configurations on the site collection using the demo project. So basically, this is the first hook where we see our configured snowflake. Now I can switch to Visual Studio. The demo project was delivered by us or can be downloaded on the community project. And the idea behind the demo project is that it's a standard SharePoint Visual Studio 2013 project. If you are a SharePoint developer, then most probably you know this. The idea is that this Snowflake project is basically built up the way MatchPoint Snow is built up. So if you use this setup, then you can use the same concept and the same approaches which we used when we developed Snow. The demo Snowflake has normal SharePoint elements. These are on one hand the features. If we look at what's contained within this feature, then we have, let's just quickly an overview. We have the Snowflake feature and the Snowflake configuration feature. And if you remember what Toby said during the installation part, MatchPoint Snow itself has two big features. One is the configuration feature, which needs to be deployed on the MatchPoint instance. This is the feature which actually deploys the MatchPoint configurations into the MatchPoint configuration library. And then there's the Snowflake feature, or the Snow feature when we're talking about Snow, which deploys everything else. So for example, in the demo project, this is the site pages, which is a list instance. And within the site pages, there is a module. It's very simple here in the demo project. It's basically, we can switch here to modules. To list instances. We have the site pages, and within the site pages module, we have a template file. This is the MatchPoint, the MP Snow ASPX. This page basically defines the HTML structure required by MatchPoint Snow. So for example, we can see we have a web part zone on the right-hand side. This is where the contextual actions are placed, and we have the middle section. This is where the main content is placed. And what we do within the elements file is we reference this page as a template, and then we simply place MatchPoint web parts within the different web part zones. So as you can see here, this is the web part zone, right? So the blue web parts zone on the right-hand side, and what you can see here is that we place a user control web part, and these are the contextual actions. Then we have the web part zone left, that's the gray bar on the left-hand side, and the middle zone, and here we place a simple Hello World configuration. And as we do this, the whole this page is deployed to default ASPX. So if you would like to have different pages, like in Snow we have the workspaces ASPX, which lists all workspaces, or the content ASPX, which lists the content, you could create, or you could add files here and place the web parts you need on these pages. Of course, you can then place your own web parts, or you can reuse the web parts delivered by MatchPoint Snow, or you can use standard out-of-the-box web parts, which are available within SharePoint. So we have the list instance, which basically defines the content pages. Then we have the modules, and this is where the configuration files which are deployed with this solution are located. This is a mechanism provided by MatchPoint, which enables you to place all your MatchPoint configuration files in a specified structure. Basically, it's this module, and below you have a folder for each type, and within the folders you have the actual configurations, so the XMLs, and then there's a solution info with some information, and based on this, MatchPoint will automatically add the configuration files to the correct folder in the document library. In case you're interested on some more details, you can find a blog on the community portal explaining how this works. So you could use this for all your MatchPoint projects. This isn't specifically related to Snow. Then, of course, we have the layouts and the images folder. These are just mapped SharePoint folders. The images is where you should place your images, and the layout is where you should place any CSS or any JavaScript files required by your solution. Now let me quickly go back to the snowflakes, to the snowflake feature, I'm sorry. The snowflake feature, as we have seen, deploys the pages and the configuration files feature contains the configuration files module. So this is basically how the demo snowflake project is set up. I just realized I forgot one important point. Of course, in most of the cases, you will need some custom code. For example, a custom configuration of a snowflake, or you need your own expressions or extensions or any C# code which is required by your solution. And we have placed this here in the SRC folder using a folder for the namespaces. And what we did here is we're not using the regular snowflake configuration, but we are implementing our own configuration. So as you can see here, we inherit the base snowflake configuration, and additionally, we implement the interface iSingleton configuration. This is just to tell MatchPoint that this is a singleton configuration, which means that there can only be one instance of this configuration within the MatchPoint environment. And I guess in most of the cases, it makes sense to use an iSingleton configuration, as most probably only want one instance of your snowflake within your environment. And within this configuration, you have the chance to define any any properties you like, and these will be added next to the properties defined by the base snowflake configuration. So these are the properties we have already seen: the contextual actions, the navigation mode, and so on. And you can extend this configuration by providing your own properties here. So maybe you need some additional information like some usernames or email addresses or any paths or credentials for any other system you might want to access within your Snowflake. This can all be done in a custom configuration. But of course, you don't need to do this. You can just use the regular Snowflake configuration provided by MatchPoint. Okay, so this is the content of the demo Snowflake. Now, I would say we can deploy the solution onto a site collection and then have a look what it looks like, and then we can start and play around and configure some stuff in MatchPoint Snow so you get a feeling of how this works. Let me quickly switch to SharePoint. I have created here a standard SharePoint site collection. I haven't configured anything yet. I just did this in advance because, as you most probably know, this sometimes takes some time. And as you can see, it's the Atlas is my host name. Sites demo Snowflake. This is going to be the root site collection or the host site collection of my Snowflake. And we would like to deploy the Snowflake to this site collection. So as you might know, you can specify the site collection URL within Visual Studio, and then the SharePoint project will be deployed to this solution. As you can see, this is the URL of a site collection, and I will now deploy the solution, and then we can see what happens. So I will open the output window so we can see what's going on. I think we don't need to go into details. Basically, what SharePoint does is it adds the WSP, handles any deployment issues if there are deployment conflicts, if the solution has already been installed before. And then we configured a PowerShell script which enables the features on the root site collection. So everything looks good, and now we can refresh our page here, and we should have our own Snowflake. Yeah, as you might know, SharePoint takes some time after deploying solution because the application pool is recycled. That's why it takes a bit longer when you load it the first time. So it looks good. This is our Snowflake. Now let's quickly go back to MatchPoint Snow before we go into details on the Snowflake. We now have two Snowflakes here. The test Snowflake was the Snowflake I quickly configured manually before. And now we have the next Snowflake, which is the demo Snowflake, which we just created. Now, what I said at the beginning is that once you make changes or once you add a new Snowflake or a new workspace type, is that you need to rerun the timer jobs in order for the tag to be created. We now have a Snowflake, but the tag for this Snowflake haven't yet been defined. And this is important because this will be, for example, wait. I'm sorry. I'll go back to the Snowflake, and what we have here, we have a landing page and we have one contextual action, so there's not much going on. But if we have a look at the configuration, this is the demo Snowflake configuration here. It's the match demo Snowflake configuration, exactly. The name and the ID and the site collection URL. This is the URL we defined within Visual Studio. And as you can see here, we have the demo field. Let's quickly switch back to Visual Studio. And this is the demo field. So this is my custom field. So we can see it's actually not a standard Snowflake configuration. It's based on the configuration class we defined here. And if we have a look at the contextual actions and the top navigation, we can see that there is one node here for the landing page, and there is one action for to create a wiki page. And we have as well defined one workspace type. Just if you're wondering where all of this information is coming from, because we haven't configured it yet, we can see in the Visual Studio, in the modules configuration files, here is the configuration. Oh, I'm sorry. Is the configuration file of the Snowflake configuration, and here we have predefined all of this stuff. So we have the workspace type here, and the create wiki page action we have just seen. So basically, we decided to keep the configuration as small as possible, but have one example for each of the specific configuration elements. Now we can have a look at the configuration, and let's say we can add a navigation node. Adding a navigation node is pretty easy. You need to add a title. I will my first content, whatever. As you can see, you could use this is a pattern string, so you could use string resources, which would make sense in a multi-language environment, but for the demo purposes, it's okay if we just add a normal text. Then we have a target URL. Most probably this will be in site pages, page, page, and you can add an icon if you want, but you are not required to do so. We can add a contextual action, let's say, for example, a JavaScript action. Each action requires a label and an icon. So you have for an icon, I'm sorry, I don't know the URL of an icon, but I think I can just type anything. It will just not be displayed correctly. And a JavaScript action, I can explain quickly the different action types we have afterwards. I will start with the JavaScript action. This is basically an action where a JavaScript is executed on click. So you could do whatever you want here. I will use a standard example. Hello world. Yes. Maybe each contextual action can have a visibility expression, because certain actions will be dependent on specific criteria. So, for example, the actions displayed within the standard MatchPoint no workspaces often check if the user is an owner, because owners are allowed to do more stuff than a regular member or a reader. So either you can leave this expression blank and then the action will be displayed to everybody, or you can type an expression, and if it returns true, then the current user will be able to see this action. Okay, so I have saved my configuration. Now I can do a refresh. Here we can see the extra top navigation node we defined, and the JavaScript action. The image is not displayed because the URL, of course, was wrong. And if we click here, then we have the Hello World example. So this is a JavaScript action. I can quickly show the other actions. A dialog action basically opens a URL in a dialog. So this is what we use when we open, for example, when you choose create a document, then there's the standard SharePoint. No, not when you create a document, but for example, when you create a task, the standard SharePoint new item page is displayed. And this is simply a dialog action containing the URL to this SharePoint page. Then we have a generic web part page action. Toby already talked quickly about this. Basically, the generic web part page is a page provided by MatchPoint, and per URL parameters you can tell this page which MatchPoint web part configuration it should display. And this action wraps this functionality, so you can specify the configuration name as well as the type, and of course label, URL, visibility, and so on. And the configuration specified here will then be displayed. Then we have the JavaScript action, which we have already seen. We have the redirect action, which simply redirects the browser to a different page, and the workspace picker action. This is what we use on the Snow site collection when you choose, for example, create a document, and then before you get to the actual action, you need to choose a target. So you need to pick a workspace. So this is basically the Snowflake configuration. I would like to go quickly into some more details on the workspace types. I think Toby said enough about these properties. What is important to know is the provisioning configuration. I will close this config and go to the base provisioning. This is a provisioning configuration provided by MatchPoint and by MatchPoint Snow, I'm sorry. And all workspace types should implement this base provisioning because this contains some relevant definitions which are required for a MatchPoint Snow workspace. What it does is it enables the features required by MatchPoint Snow, so like the standard MatchPoint web parts, the workspace navigation we have here, and the theme for and the master page, and so on. It defines some navigation nodes as well as the composed look. The composed look is what makes the Snow workspaces look the way they are. Basically, this is the MatchPoint Snow master page, as well as the color and the font file. And it as well defines some lists which we need. Or basically, these lists are available on all workspaces based on a provisioning configuration which inherits this base provisioning. Then we have the permission assignments. Here is defined which role has which SharePoint permission level. And maybe as we are here, I would like to quickly point out that you see the owner, so basically the user group which has, or the role which has the most permissions on SharePoint level. An owner is only a contributor, so he isn't an administrator, so he's only a contributor. And if we look at the members here, they have the same SharePoint permission. The reason is that the idea behind Snow is that the users, as well as the members and the owners, can both contribute to a site. This means create content, add documents, edit documents, and so on. But they are not allowed to change the basic structure of the site collection or the site. The difference between a member and the owner is all handled within MatchPoint Snow. So, for example, a member is not allowed to see the governance page, is not allowed to change the tags, or he is allowed to see the governance page, but he is not allowed to change anything. And the owner, for example, has permissions to invite other users, to give them owner rights or member rights, and so on. So this is the base provisioning. Now, as Toby has said, we have three different workspace types delivered with Snow. One is the project workspace type, and each workspace type has its own provisioning. And if we open the project provisioning, we can see that, in the web definition, the base template is the MP Snow base workspace. So this is the base provisioning I just showed you. So basically, when a workspace, a project workspace is created, then the base provisioning is applied first, and after that, the project provisioning is applied. So this means that the project provisioning adds extra stuff to the base provisioning. So if we look at what is defined within here, it's not as big as the project, the base provisioning. So it doesn't define any features because all of this is done within the base provisioning. It does, however, define, for example, the issues. This is in the navigation node. This is the link to the issues list. And the reason this is here is because the base provisioning doesn't provide any issues lists. However, within the project workspaces, we need an issues list. That's why it's defined here. And you can see here is the issues list. Now let's have a quick look at the workspace template. Within MatchPoint Snow, there is one workspace template. Basically, this is what defines the metadata associated with a workspace. We have all the fields required here, and each workspace type available within MatchPoint Snow should be based on this workspace template. What we can see here is the tag definition. That's the workspace tag, which is created automatically once a workspace is created. And when defining a tag, you need to specify the parent tag. And as you see here, we use an expression. And what this expression does is it gets the workspace type and uses the ID of this workspace tag to find the parent key, the ID of this workspace type to find the parent tag, which will then be applied. What is also defined within the workspace template configuration is the permissions. So who is allowed to create, delete, and edit these workspaces? So basically, only site collection admins are allowed to delete a workspace, and basically nobody in a normal Snow setup is site collection admin except the Snow admins, for example, but a normal owner, member, or reader is never a site admin, so nobody is allowed to delete a workspace. The reason for this is that Snow defines its own, for example, archiving process where workspaces can be archived and instead of physically being deleted. What is also required is the creator. This is what Toby explained, that MatchPoint Snow already provides a default creator and a default editor. So basically, when creating workspace, a workspace edit configuration is required where the user can enter its data. And the concept behind MatchPoint Snow was to make the creation process as easy as possible for the user. That's why basically within the creator we only have two fields which are actually visible. That's the title and the description. Every other field is hidden. And the idea is that when a workspace is created, we need a title and we might want a description. All of the other information can be added on the governance page afterwards. But maybe if you implement a specific workspace type where you need lots of information during the creation process already, then you can implement your own creator and reference it from the workspace type configuration. And then MatchPoint Snow will not display the default creator form when the workspace is created, but it will display the form you have specified, and the user then needs to enter all the data which you require in your configuration. I would say that's about it. I mean, I could explain some more, but I think it's enough for the moment. And I would like to hand back over to Toby for the questions.
Okay, hello again. So that was a lot of input, and I just see that we kept pretty much in time with our 90-minute estimate. So now I would like to open up the floor for any questions that you might have, and I hope that we didn't pull too much information in your heads over those last 90 minutes. So the floor is open. If you have any questions, just unmute yourself and feel free. Okay, Roger Bühler asked on the chat whether when you would need a MatchPoint license for developing a snowflake, and
when defining, I mean, the license system of MatchPoint is you can download MatchPoint Snow for free. You can run it for free, but as soon as you would like to make changes or use any other configurations than the ones deployed with MatchPoint Snow, then you need to have a different license. So either you then have a developer license, or you have let's say, a productive MatchPoint license.
Essentially, any changes to MatchPoint besides adjusting the metadata model to your needs as far as the business topics are concerned will require a MatchPoint license. Maria asked how to integrate MatchPoint workspaces that have been created without Snow into MatchPoint Snow, and this is actually a difficult question because, as far as I'm informed, we don't have a migration path for this specifically. Problem is that you would need to adjust the workspaces to the requirements of MatchPoint Snow in terms of, first of all, the sites themselves, as far as content within those sites, documents, libraries, etc. are concerned. Second, as far as all the metadata is concerned. And finally, you would have to integrate them, of course, in the managed path that is defined for MatchPoint Snow. So essentially, you would have to have a migration where you touch every workspace that you created, because I think it's safe to say that the existing MatchPoint workspaces will probably not be implemented in the same way. Then MatchPoint Snow implements its workspace. Andrea asks whether implementing a snowflake for a customer requires a MatchPoint license. And actually, if you're a MatchPoint partner, you can get license keys for your development purposes by just requesting a license key. We're working on a self-service mechanism, so you can get those license keys more quickly. But essentially, any development that you do for a specific customer will be covered under that customer's license agreement, and any development that you do, for instance, for a proof of concept, etc., will be covered by your company being a partner and the development license that you can get there. Leandro asks regarding support for SharePoint apps within MatchPoint Snow. As you probably are aware, at the moment, MatchPoint itself follows the classic SharePoint development model of server-side full trust solutions that are deployed on the server. And there's no specific functionality regarding the new 2013 app model. However, within MatchPoint workspaces, for instance, you would of course be free to use any SharePoint 2013 apps that you would like to install there. And regarding instantiation of apps within a Snowflake, also Snowflake root site itself is a regular SharePoint site, so you can enable apps. Regarding using MatchPoint functionality within an app, I think here we are clearly running into limitations as far as the app concept is concerned. Because an app, by definition, is a pretty isolated thing and can only communicate with SharePoint via the client-side object model or the REST API, but you cannot access specific functionality, for instance, provided by a web part on a parent site where an app is hosted, etc. Did that answer the question? Or did I miss something out? Okay, quiet in the chat. Yeah, Leandro, that's more or less correct. If you were using I think you have two possibilities here, a SharePoint hosted app, then you're pretty much limited to SharePoint out of the box, because that SharePoint hosted app will not be able to use any custom solutions as far as I'm informed, and maybe something changed in the meantime, but that's what I learned when I decided to get involved with 2013 apps. And if you're using a provider-hosted app, you're talking about your completely own bespoke web application, where you're pretty much limited as far as any MatchPoint-specific functionality is related. Moving on to Maria Stephanie's question, custom settings within the MatchPoint Snow design, for instance, company logo. This is, if I'm informed correctly, on the to-do list for the next Snow release due end of March. I'm not 100% sure regarding the timeline, but I think it's for the next release, meaning end of March, and that will implement some theming functionality as far as the Snow design is concerned. And then Marcus asked whether it's possible to implement the MySite host in a dedicated web application. It's possible. We did an implementation on one of our development machines that uses that, but we haven't tested it 100%. So we cannot guarantee you that you won't be running into problems regarding cross-web application access between the, let's call it, content web application that hosts MatchPoint Snow and the web application that hosts the MySite host site collection. So the general concept is working. We didn't do the final testing regarding the permission setup. This is also something that's on our to-do list. We have that as a definite requirement on the on our roadmap that this is going to be supported. Other questions? And again, please also feel free to use the audio channel if you don't want to type long sentences this late in the evening. Okay, last chance. Otherwise, I think we can still give you a head start of 20 minutes into your free evening, hopefully. So any more questions? All right. In that case, thanks everyone for taking the time and joining this evening. Thank you for your interest in Snow. We hope that you like what you've seen so far. As I said before, there's documentation available on the community portal. We're working on making that documentation more complete every day. At the moment, we're finalizing the user guide. I'm not sure, maybe it's already on the community portal. We are also working on a technical reference document that will pick up some of the points that we've seen in today's talk. And apart from that, if you are running into any problems when developing a Snowflake or when deploying, installing, using MatchPoint Snow, please let us know. This is the first release, so there's bound to be some problems. We hope that we covered most of them in our testing, but you know how it goes. So please let us have your feedback by mail or ring us up. And apart from that, yes, I have one question. That the session has been recorded. I will send out the link to all participants later today or at the latest tomorrow morning, and then we'll have a download link for the recording of the session. Again, thanks for your time. Have a nice evening, and hope to see you or talk to you soon. Bye-bye.